저전주왕 방송입니다.
Hello and welcome to the Pioneer Podcast. I'm Gareth Johnson, and as always, I'm joined by my colleague Justin Martell. Today, we are going to be interviewing Jodie Hill, owner of an island, lawyer, traveller, statesman, dare I say. Now, before we get to introducing and talking to her, if you're familiar with the format of the podcast, the first half is the free part where we have a little bit of a general talk, and then in the second part is where we get juicy, and that's when we're going to find out how Jodie bought herself, or with a group bought a tropical island. So Jodie, welcome.
Hi, how you doing?
Hello, yeah, welcome Jodie. Great to have you on the show. So first of all, how do we know each other?
Oh, very good question, Gareth. I think we know each other because I went on a YPT tour to North Korea, and a couple of your colleagues were my lovely guides over there. So I think we met through some of your colleagues. I can't remember. Okay. And then we first met in London, but I think by the time we met in person, we'd actually spoken quite a lot already.
We had spoken a hell of a lot by the time we met in London, and I think we've met multiple times in London since. I think I have a room in your house pretty much now, and I'd say we're pretty good friends.
I'd say so too. So far, so good. Anyway.
Yeah, it can only go bad from here. Okay, so yes, it's great having you on the show. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you, Jodie?
So hi, I'm Jodie. I live in London. I love travelling. I work in the legal industry in London. I'm originally from the north of England, but I've lived in London for about 13 years now. So kind of consider myself an honorary Londoner. Prior to the COVID-19 crisis, I was doing quite a lot of travelling, seeing friends overseas, and just generally... Sorry, I've lost what I was saying. Edit. Prior to the COVID-19 crisis, I was doing lots of travelling, meeting up with friends overseas, and kind of always planning my next adventure. So looking forward to commencing that kind of lifestyle again soon, hopefully.
Okay, sounds great. So we're all smarting a little bit over the whole COVID thing. So what was the last trip that you did before everything went all crazy?
So the last trip I did was a little 4-day trip over Kosovo and Macedonia. I actually did that trip with my friends Harriet and Alex, who we travelled together, and we actually met Alex on the Eurasia trip with YPT a few years earlier. And that was our last trip before the COVID-19 crisis hit. That was in February 2019.
So had COVID not happened, what would 2020 have looked like for you? Because I know you travel a hell of a lot. What would have been the highlights and standout places you were looking to go?
So in 2020, I did have booked to go to Vietnam and Cambodia. I'd arranged to do like a chug boat down the river between and do those two countries kind of that way. That was arranged for April 2020, so that was clearly cancelled. And then also in 2020, I had planned to go to Ibiza, which unfortunately, I think travel to Spain was allowed at the time I should have been going, but the Ibiza scene was somewhat different. So unfortunately didn't manage to do that. I did manage to go to Italy in September 2020 though, just in the kind of brief period between different sets of lockdowns in the UK. So feel quite lucky I was able to do that. But normally I would have liked to have done a lot more.
Well, it's a shame you didn't get to go to Cambodia in April of last year, because I was here. So if you do fancy coming at some point, at least you got a mate here.
Definitely, it's still on the list, but the list is getting longer, not shorter.
Yeah, well, it doesn't. Well, there we go. Well, it doesn't look like I'm going anywhere anytime soon. So, as is fairly standard in the first half of our podcast, We like to ask people how many countries they've been to. Obviously, that isn't an important thing. Who counts? I mean, I've only been to 156, for example. But where do you sit? How many countries have you been to? Do you count it or not?
I definitely count, and it's a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine, actually, country counting. And sometimes when I'm planning a trip, I'm quite keen to get a new one in there. So even if I'm going somewhere I've been before, I'm quite keen to sneak in a new one as well. So I'm on 68 at the moment. So Vietnam and Cambodia were supposed to be 69 and 70. So pretty gutted that I didn't get to do those. And I count 68. I think that is counting some countries that are not necessarily recognised by all, let's say.
Well, we can get into that because this is something me and Justin feel very, very strongly about. Did you count Transnistria on there?
I think I did, yes.
Good, that's right. That's acceptable. Are there any other questionable ones that you need us to clear up for you? Kosovo, that counts too?
Yeah, Kosovo counts. I'm definitely counting Kosovo. I think what I haven't counted, so there's also the unrecognised / recognised countries, but then I've also got a bit of a query over like fleeting visits to countries as well. So what
we can answer that. We can answer that as well. So here's for your questions. This is what we love.
Okay, so I haven't, for the record, I haven't counted this in my 68, but if I went to Tijuana, does that count as me going to Mexico?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, you see,
wait. Okay, so let's clear this up. So you went to Tijuana, right?
Yeah.
So you had to show your passport to get there?
Yes. I didn't get a stamp though.
That doesn't matter. You don't get a stamp when you go to France. But you had to show your passport, and you were on Mexican territory.
I was. I drank tequila.
Okay. I was just going to say, did you have a fajita or did you drink tequila? So you've just qualified it. You drank tequila.
Yeah, that certainly counts by the rules of engagement. And I think, as we've discussed, I think a couple times on the show so far, we really can't be, using the stamp as any gauge at this point. As much as we all want the stamps, I think that sort of might slowly be phased out in most parts of the world, in the next couple decades.
We're moving to a stampless society. It is coming, unfortunately.
But I feel like I haven't really experienced Mexico, and I really would like to go back to Mexico. That is
absolutely true. That is absolutely true. But by the rules of engagement, you've been there. You should definitely go back and explore it more. I explored it after my first visit to Belize with Mr. Alistair Riddle. Which was a very, very, very fun time. Okay, so you've been to 68 countries. What's the best country or best experience that you've had?
Lots of people ask me this, and it's really hard. It's really hard to say like what your best trip is, because sometimes like something that was just kind of cheap and cheerful and a total accident can end up being amazing, but then like something else where you basically spend months somewhere is amazing in like a totally different way. So it's actually really hard to say like what my favorite experience is.
You're welcome to give multiple answers if you
multiple
need to.
Answers. Okay, so I quite like doing trips where I go kind of searching for wildlife, and I would say the best for that was probably the Galapagos Islands. I feel like in my life, I've spent a lot of time like searching for dolphins, searching for whales, things like that, unsuccessfully. I think I remember kayaking for about 8 hours looking for dolphins once and just almost dying of exhaustion and never actually seeing any. So I kind of feel I've kind of had a lot of wildlife hunting failures on trips. So going to the Galapagos Islands where like the animals are just so tame because there's no predators there, and there's just huge tortoises at the side of the road, and the turtles will just like come and find you and things like that. So that was a really, really great experience. But then kind of very, very different trips, like things like the Eurasia tour with YPT is just so much fun. I was there with a couple of mates anyway, but then we made so many other friends on that trip and had such a laugh. Then that's like an amazing trip in like a completely different way. So it's really hard to pick favourites with my trips.
I will do a shameless plug on that one. So if you're interested, YPT do pretty much a 6-week tour that starts in Beijing, takes a Trans-Siberian, and then goes pretty much to almost every country in Eastern Europe. And again, there's usually a big group. I've done that trip, 6 or 7 times, I think. And yeah, you make a lot. Unfortunately, I wasn't there the year that you did it. But yeah, you make a lot of really good friends and drink a fair bit of vodka, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and there's such a great mix of people on those tours. So you had kind of people from all walks of life and things. So if you wanted to just like stay in and play cards, there was always people doing that. But if you wanted to kind of go out all night, then there was definitely always people up for that too.
Indeed. So we've dealt with your best experiences, your good experiences. And I kind of always try to put this in a polite way. Not the worst place that you've been to, but is there a place that you've been to that pretty much you've done it, you don't ever need to go back? I'll be honest, for me, it's Haiti.
Oh, yeah, well, it's quite small, isn't it? So where do I not need to go back to? That's a really good question, actually. Because if whatever you say, someone will go, well, did you go to this part and do this? And, you know, you've obviously never going to have done like the full experience anywhere, are you? Where do I not need to go back to? I kind of feel like I'm not in a huge rush to go back to Australia and New Zealand. I felt like I spent quite a lot of time over there and had a good time, but it's just so far away, and to kind of invest that much time and money into a trip, I kind of feel like if I put that time and money investment into a trip in the future, I'd probably want a very different experience, I would say, mainly because you don't like beautiful countries, but I didn't feel like I got like a cultural experience like you would get on like going somewhere different. I'm not saying I would never go back. It's just I would find it hard to justify going such a long way back to Australia and New Zealand when actually there's lots of places closer to home that I haven't been yet.
I agree. I find both of them, Australia and New Zealand, a little bit. I mean, they're lovely and beautiful scenery again, but yeah, a little bit dull and not so cultural as you'd expect. There is obviously that joke about Australia. What's the difference between Australia and yogurt? Do you know that one?
No. Go on.
If you leave yogurt in the sun for 200 years, it will develop civilization. Or is it culture? It's one of the two.
I think it might be culture.
Yeah, anyway.
I don't know.
I think culture works.
Just because of the yogurt
better.
scientific culture thing.
Yeah, I think the science. Yeah, I think it is culture. So I screwed up the joke, but pretty much you get the gist of it. I once did a blog on the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, which is the only country in the world that doesn't have land. And I wrote in the blog, but they do have a history and a culture, unlike real, genuine UN nation Australia. And it was just, again, a very tongue-in-cheek, just amusing comment. And we got a comment on the blog saying, I'm never going to read you again. How dare you say such things? Yeah, it's hard to joke in the modern world sometimes, unfortunately. So, Jodie, you're actually the first female we've had on the podcast, so that makes you very special.
Okay.
So,
how many? What percentage are you on? What percentage, male to female?
I think is this blog number 6, Justin?
This would be number 6. So we're 5 and 6.
So
5 and 1 rather.
So we're 5.
You need to
5 and 1. Yeah, we got some more females lined up. As soon as you're our first one. I mean, what you do a lot of traveling by yourself. You do a lot of traveling with female friends. What advice do you give to? Because I think we have a fair few listeners, hopefully, that are not yet travel experts, much like our good selves. What advice would you give to younger female travellers who want to go out and see the world?
So, do you know what? I've probably never been in a situation where I felt like genuinely unsafe. And that's, I've come pretty close to it. I went around the world on my own when I was 21. And then I still travel alone sometimes now, or with like female family or friends. I've had a couple of hairy situations, don't get me wrong. I was kidnapped in Thailand.
Okay, stop. Okay.
Yeah, that's not exactly something we casually throw out there.
So I had an argument with a taxi driver in Thailand. Just your standard Thai to Westerner argument about the price of a taxi ride, and then he threw me in the back of his van and locked the door and drove off and didn't let me out until the next day. But I didn't actually feel
the next day.
Yeah,
Stop! You keep skipping the story. He kept you in his fucking taxi until the next day. You don't get to go, oh, but you know what? I didn't feel that worried. You got to finish. You got to give us this whole story now. Okay, that's fine. We can deal with the fact that you wasn't scared after. But why? Okay, that's great again. But what? He kept you there for the whole night in his cab.
Yeah, well, it was quite late anyway, so I'd say the whole night is an exaggeration, because it was probably some way into the night at the beginning of this interaction. But no, it was just a classic row, and yeah, I think he just wanted me to calm down and stew. And yeah, the next day he let me out. Actually, the main problem was when I was let out, I didn't know where I was.
Okay,
that was the main problem.
So that's brilliant. So what happened when he let you out? What was
the next day? I'm just kind of in the middle of nowhere, so I start trying to walk to find some civilization. Was walking down a main road. I think it was pouring with rain as well. And then this Australian guy on a motorbike pulled up and was like, "You okay?" I was like, "No, actually, I'm not. I have no idea where I am." And he gave me a lift. So there you go.
And there we was, just slagging off Australians, and
I know,
it turns
exactly.
out they were your knights in shining armour.
But I feel bad.
Okay,
I don't want to put women. I don't want to put women off going away on their own. I probably didn't put myself in a great situation by going to a full moon party on my own and then having an argument about probably what was only about £5. So I didn't cover myself in glory there.
No, I would say not. But what was the interaction like when he let you out? I mean, how somebody kidnaps you for however many hours, and then they lock you in a van. He just opened the door and was just like ventured for you to go
and just shout.
Or what was the story?
Yeah, and just shouted.
Did you end up paying him the fare or not?
No, did I act? That was my whole beef from the start.
So you won the argument.
I won the argument, you could say. I went to the police to report it to the police, but anyone who's been to Thailand will know that that's not a great experience. The police just wanted to charge me like a huge amount to report the crime. When you're being asked to like make a payment in cash to report a crime, you're not exactly filled with confidence it's going to be investigated properly. So I just thought it was probably best left.
I think so. So that's a brilliant story. So I'll let you carry on with your advice for female travellers, and hopefully you throw in a couple of other curveballs like that.
So yeah, my advice for female travellers is have some confidence. I live in London. I've been followed home from the train station in London before, so I don't necessarily feel that because you're away you're going to be in a more vulnerable situation, because unless you you can be in a vulnerable situation in either in your hometown or in a city in a Western country. You're not necessarily always going somewhere that's less safe. There's probably places I wouldn't go on my own. I think that's definitely true. But I'd say the advice is just really similar to what you probably have at home. So, don't be on your phone, be alert to yourself, stay on main streets, don't look like a tourist and don't look lost, I think. I mean, it's a lot easier these days. Like back before, like we had decent mobile phones, you'd have to have your tourist map out and stuff to find where you were going. Whereas now you can just check Google Maps discreetly without looking like too lost, can't you? And, when you're away, make friends. I made friends with like lots of other female travellers. So I would often stay in like single sex dorms and things like that and make female friends when you're away. And I was traveling when I first went traveling on my own. The first place I went to on my own was America, which is quite easy traveling. And when I was there, I met two girls, and the three of us travelled together for quite a while, and that worked out really nicely. So yeah, make friends, and just follow all the advice you'd follow at home, really, and pick your destinations. There are places I wouldn't go on my own. There are countries that are more hostile towards women travelling on their own, for example. So maybe they wouldn't be top of my list.
So where specifically right now would you not want to go?
Oh, I wouldn't go to like Saudi Arabia or anything like that on my own. I don't think.
No, you'd have a pretty shit time, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think I'd go to Dubai on my own, to be honest.
Yes, I can understand that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge Dubai fan anyway. It's a great stopover, but it's not. I think Dubai epitomises to me the other kind of traveller. I find the kind of person that raves about Dubai tends to not be the kind of person that enjoys a 25-cent vodka at Tiraspol train station. But each and all to their own. So we're going to move on to one of the interesting things about you and the island in a moment. But do you have any other good travel tales to share with us? Have you been kidnapped anywhere else, or been in any other quite hairy situations?
Hairy situation was when it was on the Eurasia tour. We were crossing over one of the borders in the minibus, and me and my friends had got loads of beers to have on the journey. So we'd been in the van for quite a long time, and we were sat on the back seat, and there's like a door out there's like double doors at the back. Anyway, we were hanging around at this border for ages, and I could see like a toilet block, and we were like, oh, we've been drinking lager for quite some time now. So we said to the driver, oh, can we get out and run and use the loo? And he said no. But we were sat at the back of the bus, and then one of my friends was like, oh god, I'm absolutely desperate. I'm gonna have to just like jump out the back door of the truck. So we opened the back door, jumped over all the bags, ran to the loo, ran back, and then the driver went absolutely mental, and he was like, you are on the border, you have just crossed over the border, you are lucky you have not been shot. I wouldn't recommend that.
Do you remember which country that was in?
I can't remember now,
actually. Was it Moldova to Romania, perhaps?
Yes, it was Moldova to Romania, yeah.
So literally, you ran back over the EU border for a piss and then came back.
Yeah, and definitely got told off.
Yeah, I think the driver probably, he might have had decent reason for that.
Yeah, you're right there.
Yeah, but then we've all drunk beer on a bus, so we understand where you're coming from.
It's a lesson learned.
Indeed. Okay, so of the many interesting things about you, one of them is that you own an island in the Caribbean. Is that right?
Yeah, why not, hey? Of course I own an island in the Caribbean.
Okay, so, well, but so just in case our readers, just in case our listeners misunderstand things, you don't own an island in the Caribbean because you're a big shot lawyer. You own an island in the Caribbean because you clubbed together with a bunch of other people and bought an island. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. This sounds a little bit like Fire Festival to me.
No, I think you'll find Fire Festival was an event. So I've had a couple of people ask about my island and then say like, "Oh, are you promoting a Fire Festival?" But Fire Festival was an event that sold tickets in exchange for a few days of an experience, which obviously didn't go to plan. Whereas the clubbing together to buy in an island, we actually all own a tangible thing, which is an island, and we have a registered company, and we own shares in that company. So, there's a clear return on your investment, even if it's like buying. I don't see it any different to kind of buying a property in the UK, for example. Like you exchange money and you get something in return. Where I think, Fire Festival was an event that you buy tickets for something that gets cancelled. You could look at it as simply as that.
Okay, well, yeah, obviously I'm sold on the idea. So, so 1 second. So before we get to the halfway point and we get rid of all our freeloaders, tell us a little bit more about the project. So a bunch of you got together and bought an island. How did you get together? How did this all start? I mean, this will probably sound mental to most of our listeners. How does this happen? How do you end up? I mean, we'll get to sort of the nuts and bolts of this in the second half of how you actually bought the island and stuff like that. But how did you get a group together and where did you find each other, et cetera, et cetera? Can you explain that for us?
So it kind of started as a drunken idea, I think, between a few people. And then once you start looking on the internet for islands, you start realising, actually, if we got a few of us together, not hundreds and hundreds, but, handfuls and handfuls of people together, we could actually do this. So I think the original kind of first 10, 20 people, etc., were actually friends and maybe friends of friends, people we'd met on trips. I think a few people from the Eurasia trip I've mentioned are involved. And then once you kind of get a bit bigger, then we kind of got some publicity, and then you kind of get, someone who sees a newspaper article or this, that and the other. But the initial start of it really was just people we know and asking, I asked from people I went to university with and they were interested. It really did kind of, I'd say probably half our investors were actually just people we all knew, which is actually really nice. And then, as we've grown, more people have come on board, and we have tend to find that the people who have come on board are people who are interested in kind of travel and like more adventurous travel and things like that. So it's been a really good experience so far, for sure.
Okay, and okay, so as we're on the first part, how do people join this? Do an absolutely shameless plug. I mean, are you still looking for people? How do people find out about the project? How do they join? How much is it? Give us all you can.
Yeah, so definitely still looking for people. Go on our website, letsbuyaniisland.com. There you'll see, contact us, click the button. Someone lovely will get back to you really fast and give you any information you want. And, we've got plenty of paperwork to show, our company registration, our land ownership. It's absolutely 100% all above board, and we'll take your money off you. Thank you very much. But then you will be a proud owner of a share in our company where our island is registered to. So please go to letsbuyaniisland.com and click contact us.
Wonderful. So the $4 million question is, does it cost $4 million? How much does it cost to join?
It does not cost $4 million. So the wonderful thing of clubbing together is that you only have to put in around $3,250 to have your very own share of an island, which I don't think you'd many of us would spend that on a trip. So to be able to be involved in something like this and actually own part of an island and visit your island and tell people you own an island is amazing, really.
Yeah, so it's in a lot of respects, it costs less than your average holiday, and it sounds a bit like the world's coolest timeshare. Would that be sort of giving it the right thing?
I've definitely referred to it as that. Timeshare kind of got a bad name there at one point, didn't it? Probably because it was all like, ropey apartments in Spain. But this is definitely the world's coolest timeshare.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it, and at a great price. So, to our listeners, www.letsbuyAnisland.com. You can find all the information on how to join, the price, the legalities, the island, everything like that. So, that brings us to the end of the first part of the podcast, where we say goodbye to all you freeloaders, and we say a warm welcome to all you guys that have subscribed. For you guys that have subscribed, you will get to listen to how you find an island and how you actually go about buying an island. So goodbye and hello. Okay, so welcome to part 2 of the Pioneer Podcast. We are talking to Jodie Hill about how you go about crowdfunding and buying a tropical island. So, Jodie, you spoke to us before. You explained that a bunch of friends got together, you got a website, you crowdfunded money, and somehow ended up buying an island. Can we slow down this process a little bit? So, like you said, you got 20 or 30 investors all throwing in $3,000 each. What was the next part of the process? What happened then?
So the next part of the process is to we then decided, let's work out what we actually want to buy. So we came up with a bit of a list of criteria. So and they weren't necessarily we didn't have to necessarily meet all of them, but they were things that were a priority, and different people had different priorities. So some people were quite keen to have somewhere with a tropical climate, but then we had lots of other things like accessibility in terms of to arrive on international flights. Do we want an island that takes 3 days for anyone to get to? Maybe actually we'd much prefer an island that's much more accessible than that. So we had a lot of very practical considerations on our must-haves and should-haves list. So we kind of had a bit of a running list of what we were looking for, and the more of what we were looking for we could tick on one option, the better. So once we sorry, were you gonna ask something?
Yeah. No. Sorry, carry on, please.
So once we had a list of what we'd like, then we started making a short list of actual properties for sale. There are lots of places where islands for sale are listed. So we found some on websites where you can go and buy private islands for like millions and millions and millions of dollars. But then we also found some stuff. I actually found an island on Rightmove in the UK. So lots of places online have islands for sale. But what I think we found is when you go on these private island websites, there is a bit of a focus to stuff on stuff that was out of our price range. But once you start inquiring about things, then you get to speak to the agents, and the agent will say, well, actually, I've got 3 more for sale that aren't listed because they're not super fancy and expensive. So you start building a network in the different countries you're considering and hearing about things. So that was kind of the next thing that happened. Okay, brilliant.
So you spoke about, out of your price range. I mean, for most of us, we would assume that an island costs millions of dollars. Right.
Yeah. And a big island with property already built on it in the Caribbean, or probably is millions of dollars. But we were actually looking at look for smaller properties. We're not trying to build a hotel resort. We don't need acres and acres and acres. And we also looked at islands that were in lakes as well, especially kind of, in Europe. You will find stuff that's more affordable for sure. It's just easy to get sucked into.
So what kind of price range?
So I think
what kind of price range are we talking? What does an island cost?
Sorry, say again.
Yeah, what does an island cost? I think most of our listeners, again, would just assume that it's millions. So you're saying it's not. What does it cost to buy an island?
I think the cheapest island I saw was up for auction in the Republic of Ireland, and it was a lake island, and I think the agent told me they were expecting it to go for €40,000. So
wow,
there really is there really is a all ends of the scale in the island buying market.
Oh, wow, I mean, that's crazy. So basically $50,000 you can buy an island in the EU. Although being in the Republic of Ireland, it's not exactly tropical, I'm guessing.
It might be a bit chilly. And we also looked at an island. We looked at an island in Estonia, which I think was only €70,000. But then,
yes,
obviously there were drawbacks to that as well.
Yeah, so to tell us, so obviously we're going to get to the island that you did purchase and why you purchased it and where you purchased it. But yeah, tell us about some of the ones that didn't cut the mustard, the ones that you decided not to do, such as Estonia and Ireland and these kind of places. Yeah, the runners-up list, as it were.
The runners-up. So there were quite a few runners-up, and we would normally get someone out of our group who was near to go and do a little recce of an island. So myself and some others went to Estonia because it's cheap flight from London to there. So we looked at islands kind of all over the world really. So some of the ones that didn't make it, okay, as an example.
So tell us, so before we get through, before we get to that, tell us about the Estonia trip. I know Estonia is very cold. I know it's very near Russia. So how was that trip? It was a group of friends who went there. How did that one go?
It was a group of friends who we didn't meet until we got there. Like we'd never met in person before. I was really hungover because the night before I'd actually met up with someone who's also an investor in the island. So I didn't know him before, but I met up with him in London and just accidentally got really drunk. So I was so hungover. I honestly didn't think I'd make it to Estonia, but somehow I made it. And then so met up with some of the island investors there. So we hired a car and drove north from Tallinn and found this island. Unfortunately, it wasn't that easy to get to. You kind of had to wade across. It wasn't very deep, the water from the mainland to the island, but so this was one of the problems with it. It was difficult to get to, and you weren't actually allowed. It wasn't clear whether you were allowed to build some kind of bridge or some kind of accessibility over to it. So that was one of the drawbacks. It was also pretty cold. Although we were so lucky, the day we went, it was one of those like lovely, crisp, sunny days. So we got some drone footage of the island as well. It's actually a really nice part of the world around there. I'd like to go back actually. And it was a really fun trip. But no, I think just the combination of it's very difficult to get to, and there were a lot of local laws about so we could have built on the island, but we wouldn't have been able to build anything that touched the mainland. So kind of looking into like, could we kayak to our island and things like that. it was actually very difficult to get to it because the water was very shallow and full of rocks, so you weren't allowed to build over it, and actually it wasn't deep enough for any kind of to like travel by water to it, so it wasn't really a front runner, but it was still fun to go and visit.
No, it doesn't. It sounds like a fun trip, but yeah, I think trying to sell the dream of an ice cold Estonian island doesn't sound that easy either. What other places did you look in? You mentioned Ireland. I think you went to the there was places looked at in the Philippines as well. Can you tell us anything about those places?
Yeah, so Ireland has some rules about land ownership. I know some of our guys went over to Ireland, and I wasn't part of that trip, but another island I looked into over there, like there was some historic land ownership rights over it, which made it quite legally tricky. But actually the problem in the Philippines, so like coming from a legal background, and actually like there are a few of our investors that have a legal background, the kind of land ownership rules in some countries such as the Philippines, where you have to it's quite difficult to kind of own a property there outright if you're not from that country. It just made some of our investors a bit uncomfortable, really, which I think is understandable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So where did you eventually buy your island?
So we eventually bought our island in Belize. We'd actually looked at a few islands in Belize because it was kind of a bit of a sweet spot between something we could afford that was warm, had land ownership laws that everyone was comfortable with, and actually there was quite a lot for sale there. So Belize kind of hit the sweet spot, and that's where one of our guys, Marshall, actually developed a relationship with a local agent. And as I said before, once you start inquiring about islands, you build a relationship with an agent or two, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we've got this that's not on the market yet, and you get kind of a bit more of an insight into what's for sale that maybe doesn't show up on the websites that are listing the $5 million properties.
Okay, so why Belize though? I mean, obviously, yeah, like you said, they listed a lot of islands, but I mean, what are the plus points for any of our listeners that haven't been to Belize? What's good about Belize from a travel point of view, but also what's good about Belize from a buying an island point of view?
From a legal point of view, buying an island, the property laws are quite similar to a lot of like Western countries. So you can just go and buy property there and you own it. Stable government. I think my worst nightmare would be like buying an island in a country and then they just change the law to say the government owns all the land or something like that. Whereas Belize is it's a stable government, and there's no guarantees against anything. But I feel personally like safe and secure investing in Belize. In terms of Belize as like a location generally, it just ticks a lot of boxes. So it has a warm climate. It's in a really good position globally. So it's really easily accessible from the US. So lots of US airports fly direct to Belize City Airport. And, so if you're in the US, that's great. But most of us can actually get to the US to then have like, a fun layover somewhere and then travel down to Belize. It's also really handy, as you said, when you went over there, you went to Mexico. I'd really like to go to Guatemala. There's lots of fun travel in that region, I think. So, and yet it's not as expensive as kind of buying in like say Barbados or something like that, which is definitely out of our price range at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I would jump in there and just say that you're absolutely right. So when I took the trip, I flew from, I think I flew from Colombia to Guatemala, and then we took a bus down to one of the border cities with Belize, and then we travelled into Belize. Did looking around for islands and stuff, and then we went north and went through to Mexico, and then I travelled all the way up to Cancun before I finally flew off to my next destination. So yeah, I mean, Belize is perfectly positioned in that middle world, like you say. It's right by America. It's part of the Caribbean, but it's also part of Central America. I think yes, it's a very special place, and obviously you've got a tropical Caribbean island. What more could you want? So, how do you actually buy an island, though? Again, you've said you're not Fire Festival. A bunch of people have given you money. What do? You form a company. You just take the cash. You deliver cash to them. How does that part of things work? How do you buy? How do common people like us buy islands, Jodie? That's what I want to know.
Well, for anyone who's bought a house, it's a similarly drawn out admin heavy process, I'm afraid. So it's good to do it with friends because then you can share the burden. That's my advice. So yeah, we set up and registered a company called IBG Inc. And basically all our investors own a share in that company. It's really simple, and that company owns the island. So how do you buy an island? It's the same as buying a house. You pay a deposit, you exchange, contracts get DHL'd around the world, and you wait, someone loses a bit of paper, you have to send it again, and then one day you get told you've completed and you own an island. So yeah, definitely do it with friends like us, because then it is anyone who's bought a house definitely in this country, will be able to tell you that it's always harder than you think. Not in terms of anything going wrong or anything, just in terms of the hoops you've got to jump through, like sending different forms of ID around and things like that. So yeah, it's a very admin heavy process, but worth it in the end.
So all right, so you own an island. What's the island like, and what do you plan to do with it?
So at the moment, the island is very much a blank canvas. So it's really well located, actually, because it's not actually too far from Belize City Airport. I really hate it when you go on holiday and you're exhausted and you get off the plane and then you've got loads and loads more travel to do, and you just kind of at that point really itching to get to where you're going. Whereas the really good thing about our island is you just get off the plane, get on a boat, and then you're there. So I think that's a really good thing. So we can already dock boats on our island, it's able to do that. So at the moment you could technically go and camp on our island, but I know that's not ideal for anyone. I think I'm probably a bit too old for camping now anyway as well. So so
you're never too old for camping, Jodie. Don't say that. You're never too old for camping. And I think at some point when COVID's over, we're all going to do at least one night camping on the island. We might then stay in the Hilton on night two. Night two we get to stay in the Hilton, but night one, you get to drink rum. Drinking rum on an island, that makes you a pirate, not an alcoholic.
Yeah, I mean, I can do one night, okay? I just don't want to do multiple nights and not wash my hair and things like that. I feel like as I've got older, I definitely need some of my comforts.
Yeah.
So yeah, the plan is definitely to build.
We don't want to get stuck. We don't want to get stuck there either. Yeah. Okay. So what are you going to build? What are you going to build?
So we're kind of looking at doing it in two stages, really. So the first stage is as soon as we have freedom, people have freedom to travel, and people are excited about making plans again. We want to kind of offer not a camping, more of a glamping experience. So with facilities toilets and showers and things like that, but more of a kind of temporary structure. A very affordable solution, let's say, and that will be able to get us using the island, going to the island, having other people go to the island, and generating income. And then the longer term plan is to build something that's got kind of more structure to it. So now you can get these like modular houses that just come on the back of a boat and pop up. Probably not that simply, but that's how it's made to look. But yeah, then the long-term plan is to build something kind of more permanent and kind of maybe a little bit more comfort. So, but no, the first plan is definitely to have something that provides facilities for, you know, bathrooms and things like that, but with more of a kind of glamping vibe, let's say.
Well, that sounds absolutely wonderful to me. There will be a bar as well, I assume.
Oh, definitely. What I'd really like to do is, so where the island is, there's some other islands in the vicinity. One of them is owned by Leonardo DiCaprio, by the way. There's some other islands in the vicinity. It would be really good to kind of get like a local boat company to do like a bar hopping tour along all the islands. I think that would be a really cool thing to be involved in.
A pub crawl going to different bars on different islands on a boat. Yeah, I'm definitely sold on that idea. That sounds absolutely wonderful. Okay, so I spend a lot of time online looking at crazy shit. You know, places like Sealand, the Kingdom of Lovely, all these funny little micronations. You know, where you get a bunch of weirdos that declare a country and give themselves silly titles. Is there anything like that going on with the island?
There might be a bit of that, yes. All my Amazon parcels come to Baroness Jodie Hill because I decided that's what I am now. Now I own an island. So,
that's fabulous. You're a Baroness now. Okay.
Definitely. I own an island. Why not? So, yes.
So tell us about your country. Tell us about your country, please, Baroness. Exactly.
So we as a kind of side project to you know, owning a viable business, that is an island. We also have our Principality of Islandia project, which is, you know, essentially a version of what you just said. So we have land, we'll have a dwelling, etc. So we therefore make a, in inverted commas, country. And what that enables us to do is kind of enhance the local laws and regulations. So, for example, we will be part of Belize. We're part of Belize and Belize is great. But then if on our island we want to say we won't have any single-use plastic, and that's the rule / law of our island, then that can be one of the Principality of Islandia's laws, for example. And then we also have a nice little sideline in selling kind of titles. So, yeah, according to my postman, I'm definitely Baroness Jodie Hill now. But, you know, it's just a really fun thing to do. And, you know, as you said, lots of other micronations do sell, you know, titles, lordships, ladyships. They make really good Christmas presents, actually. So that enables us to have our kind of own identity in a way. So we can have stamps and, I don't know, all kinds of memorabilia, things like beach towels, etc.
Fridge magnets. Got to be fridge magnets.
Yeah, they're not very environmentally friendly, though, I don't think.
Okay, so no to fridge magnets. But you brought up a very interesting concept. So what you said was basically you're going to respect the laws of Belize because you have to. You can't just say, oh, we're going to make a meth lab, for example. That's just the first thing that came to mind. But you can then have your own laws on the island, so long as they don't interfere with the laws of Belize. That's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, like, if you were a big company with an office in London, you could say no one's allowed to walk around with a cup of hot coffee without a lid on it, as an example. So it's no different. It's no different, basically, to us, to a company or organisation, or even a hotel. So a hotel could make its own rules, for example. So it's no different to that really, but it's a really good opportunity.
So So you're exploring democracy through the prism, as it were, of a private company, essentially.
Essentially, yes, and it's a really good opportunity for us to kind of, as a collective group, think about like what's important to us. So, you know, I've already touched on it, but what's important to us is kind of the environment and being sustainable. So that's something that's important to us as a group. So we can have rules in place that are, you know, any company can do, and having our own island enables us to control the activities within that space.
Okay, yeah, no, that's really good and really interesting. So again, so that our listeners can understand it a little bit more, it's a private company, IBG Inc., that's registered in the Cayman Islands. You've got the kind of micronation element. How is the project governed? Is it there's a company, or is it democracy? Do you vote on things? How does stuff get done? Who does it? How does it all work?
So we've got a corporate constitution. So in the corporate constitution, shareholders get votes on certain things. So kind of similar to any other private company. We have voted representatives. So I'm a voted representative, for example. So every couple of years, the shareholders will vote who represents them to the board. And then, you know, we just have a lot of discussions as well. Kind of a lot of, not official, but unofficial discussions and idea sharing. And that's how stuff gets done. People volunteer to do things. So, you know, quite often we'll say, who has skills in such an area. So, for example, a couple of our investors did our website. Just things like that. Stuff gets done on a lot of people using their free time, actually, which is really nice.
And it's a great place for I guess just people who are kind of nerds with this kind of stuff, with micronations and unrecognized countries and things like that, to kind of geek out and talk with like-minded people.
Yeah, definitely. And because we're really well represented globally, so we'll often be translating stuff, you know, can someone translate this into French so we can put something in French on our website, and, you know, things like that. We're actually really lucky that we're well represented across kind of people who are interested and knowledgeable and have different skills in different areas.
Okay, and what is your official title in this in the Principality of Islandia?
Well, so I have a dual title. So in the Principality of Islandia, I'm actually Prime Minister, and I did always want to be Prime Minister, so that pleases me greatly. But then I'm Prime Minister / Director Investor Relations. So that means I basically represent all our shareholders and their opinions. So it's a dual role. So I've got kind of the fun title and the corporate title in parallel.
Okay, so what does a head of investor relations, Prime Minister of a micronation do?
So kind of just keep in touch with everyone, really. Make sure, I think there was kind of more queries and to field during the process of buying an island. I had a few people contact me. They were worried about this, that, or the other. So it's basically addressing people's concerns. And if I don't know the answer, finding the answer. Now we've actually bought our island. It's more kind of keeping in touch with everyone, collecting their ideas, and just keeping people updated on what we're doing in terms of what our plans are for developing the island. It's been a strange year for everyone, so I think over the last year I've just been kind of keeping everyone enthused really about kind of our plans for the future.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one. We haven't kind of a rabbit hole we haven't gone down. How the hell has COVID affected this? I think you said you bought the island in December of 2019, right? How have you survived? How have you survived COVID, essentially?
Yeah, so it was really a real shame in terms of timing for us, because we just completed the purchase of our island. We were kind of all raring to go, and then all of a sudden we're not allowed to go anywhere or do anything. So no, we haven't actually been to the island. It's just not been possible in the last year. What we have been doing is we've still been doing publicity. So we've had some good publicity over the last year. We've had some new investors come on board in the last year, in fact. But I think on the whole, it's been problematic for us because A, we can't go there, and B, it's potentially, in a lot of people's mind, not a great time for them to make an investment, just because so many countries have financial uncertainty at the moment. So I think a lot of people have felt like it's not really their perfect timing to make an investment in anything, really. Although we're starting to see that change now, where we very much hope at the tail end of this pandemic, and people are looking to the future again. So
you basically you've survived, and you're waiting for stuff to get better so you can move things on to the next level.
Yeah, we've definitely survived. It could have been much worse. I think we could have had no movement on investment. We could have even had investors, depending on what their financial situations were, we could have even had investors to asking us if they can sell their share back to us, and we didn't have anyone in that position, so we were really lucky.
Okay, so we're getting towards the end of things now, but there's pretty much one last question I want to ask. So, owning an island in the Caribbean specifically, is pretty fucking cool, right? So, how often are you in the pub on a day, out with mates or whatever? How often do you drop it in the conversation? Well, actually, I own an island in the Caribbean.
Oh, fairly often. I know it's quite shameless, isn't it? But do you know what? The world's a competitive place. You mentioned like office, pub, dating, everything. It's all competitive. So, but I never meet anyone else who owns an island.
Yeah, it's very rare that you meet somebody that owns an island in the Caribbean. Although if you meet people from Finland, they all own an island. I think every Finnish person I've ever met's family has an island. But it's in Finland. That's the problem.
I think it's the same in Norway as well. I think there's a lot of islands in Norway.
Yeah, I think a fair few Canadians own islands as well. But again, yeah, it doesn't count if it gets that cold. But okay, so I want to thank you for your time today, Jodie. It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you as always. Now, for anyone that missed the memo or has missed any of the early part of this, www.letsbuyAnisland.com, $3,250 gets you a slice of paradise in the Caribbean. Okay, I'm Gareth Johnson. I've been assisted today, as always, by Justin Martell. This is the end of the Pioneer Podcast. If you want to hear more from us, check out our website, www.ypt.life/subscribe. And that's the way you can get to hear all of our podcasts, join our video club, get exclusive content, and all that other kind of jazz.
Yeah.